They say it takes a village, but what's a village without the folks that live there? Being a villager means showing up for your neighbors, contributing where you can, and protecting your home, in this case, the village. Erin Sprague, CEO of Protect Our Winters, or POW, thinks this way when it comes to POW's main goal, combating climate change. I'm one of your hosts, Yeti Legs, and you're listening to the Yeti Walks into Base Camp Talking Through Hiking podcast, a show for hikers, backpackers, thru hikers, tree huggers, and anyone else who just loves to walk outside. We're a hiking podcast with a goal to make the outdoors more accessible for all of you by telling stories, sharing information, and having folks on that offer advice, gear, and peace of mind. We also like to talk about environmental topics and what's happening on our planet. Knowledge is power, and as lovers of the great outdoors, we want all of us to feel a bit more empowered. As temperatures rise, and they are without a doubt, our winters are taking a hit, something that may affect your next hike, including water availability, wildfires, or even increased avalanche risk. In today's chat, Erin shares an empowering message with us by explaining what we can do as a village to fight the real culprit behind climate change. Is it AI, extracting materials for renewable energy, burning fossil fuels? Tune in to find out more and to learn how being a good villager looks like simply knowing your neighbor's name. Thanks for being here, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, Tram, Bam, Tramily, people of the world that just like to go outside and walk. Welcome to our podcast, Yeti Walks into Base Camp, Talking Through Hiking, and you're listening to an Environmental Corner episode. Our last Environmental Corner episode, we spoke with Alex Lee of POW, so we're going to keep a trend going here. We're speaking with Erin Sprague of POW as well. Now, Alex was down in Alaska, but Erin, you're a little bit closer. You're actually here in Colorado as well, but we're separated by a snowstorm and about an hour and 10-minute drive, right?
Could be an hour and 10 minutes, could be 3 hours in the Front Range. You honestly never know.
You never know. To speak a little bit to your credibility and your hiking experience, I've got some information here that says you're an extensive hiker, backpacker. You've done some thru hiking, ultra marathons, backcountry and alpine adventures, and the list goes on. You want to speak a little bit to that and what kind of hikes you've been doing?
I love hiking so much. I think it is the most reflective and joyful activity, and everyone at POW loves hiking. So I've done everything from parts of the John Muir Trail when I lived in California, just being totally obsessed with the amazing hiking that's in Yosemite, to more like mountaineering and ski touring. I just got back from the Alps where I did a 8-day ski tour that was pretty special. And this was not hard this season, but it was definitely my best turns of the season. So sadly, Colorado was not my best turns this year, but yeah, just love to get out on the trails in any season.
Truly, I feel like nature is the great reset. If you're stressed or angry or sad, just go outside for a couple hours and it helps. It might not be the fix that you need unless you can go out for a week or months on end, but it always seems to help, doesn't it?
It's so true. Our POW founder, Jeremy Jones, many of your audience probably knows Jeremy. He's a pretty great big mountain snowboarder. He often tells me, just get outside. If it's 10 minutes, it makes a difference. If you try to get out for 10 minutes, you'll probably stay out there for an hour. Pretty much everything is actually a climate decision. So the way that you heat and cool your home, the types of transportation that we use, the types of energy that's on our local grid, it's in the products we buy, right? Like it's everything. And so when you're talking about change at that scale, it's slow. And the challenge is like, we may not have that time. And so we're focused on how can we leverage the power of our shared identity and the emotional resonance of what we love to help drive that change a little faster.
Yes. Preach. That's all I can say is preach. How would you How would you handle a conversation with someone who denies climate change is a problem, that global warming is a problem? It's a hard one.
It's hard. It also relates to just this really scary trend of science becoming less prominent and less present in our decision making and in everything we do. That's actually what scares me most. I mean, when I think about like growing up, the people that I admired and respected, it was our great inventors, our great scientists. I was just watching the lunar mission with my kids, and they were so inspired by space. And first, I would want to find common ground around that, around just like, is there a spirit of discovery that we could tap into? Because that's essentially what science is. And unfortunately, the fossil fuel industry has made climate polarizing and divisive. And at POW, we do try to find common ground. We have many conservative members of our movement. We're not going to talk about other issues we disagree on with them. We're going to talk about where we have common ground, which is in clean air, clean water, and also hopefully the importance of discovery in our health, in our advancement, in our economy. And we have found common ground there. We've had great conversations with people who disagree on many things, but really want to preserve the environment as a source of our country's heritage, our future for future kids, and a foundation that, frankly, we all benefit from in our economy and in our lives.
It seems like, our outdoor spaces, our public lands, that's all common ground, regardless of your political affiliation. Most people, their religious views, folks want to get outside and they want to protect it. And that's kind of been a message that we've tried to push a little bit, is get outside and like talk face to face with people and get off of social media and stop doing these the hate speech that goes back and forth between people on there. Again, if you're like in an area or in a space that you love and you confront someone, even if you have differing opinions, you can still connect on things. Your common ground is where you are.
Yeah, it's interesting. Historically, POW has done a lot of its influence and work online. We're really active on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook, having conversations, driving education, helping to fight misinformation. But we also see a dark side of it. And we see that inauthenticity that you're referencing. Like some of the comments on there, if you met that person in real life, and by the way, they may not be a real person, would they say that to your face? I don't think so. And so a step that we took, in addition to staying present online, because that, the reality is, we have to show up in that space and help people see what we believe. But we've also started building community chapters, and we'll meet at a brewery, we'll meet at a trailhead, we'll go skiing, and we invite everyone. And it's sort of if you're interested in clean air, clean water, come hang out. And we've had a lot of people show up, and we've had people say things like, I really care about the environment. I also really care about my community and meeting people and being in a space where we do things together. We've had people say things like, I'm lonely, and I just thought this would be a great place to meet like-minded people who like what I like. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring people together. And maybe a really amazing side effect of our work at POW is that people will feel a little bit more connected to their communities and each other. Ultimately, the biggest problem we're, of course, trying to solve together is climate change.
There's something to be said for community. Ever since COVID, it's kind of been difficult, at least on a personal level for me, to get back out and to be social again, because you were so closed off during that time.
Absolutely. I think as a society, we're still recovering from, honestly, some of that trauma. And I heard this great expression that changed how I approach it. Everyone wants a village, but nobody wants to be a villager. And a way that I started testing myself on that was I asked myself 3 things. Do I know who my local representative is in Congress? Like, can I name my local officials? Do I know who represents me and my interests? The second question I asked, and this is really specific to someone who loves clean energy, but I asked, do I know where my electricity comes from my local grid? And I used to not, and I had to like research that and really learn, especially as I moved. And then the third question I asked was, do I know the names of all of my neighbors? And have I invited them over? Like, do I check on them when we get a big snowstorm? Some of them are elderly. Do we support each other? And the answer to that last one for a little while was no. And I was like, well, I'm not a villager then if I'm not showing up for the people that I live closest to. So I tried to take just small responsibility for that and show up more. And it's really made a difference in our neighborhood interactions. And it's also been much more joyful for my family and me.
I'm going to ask you who your favorite neighbor is. You don't have to answer.
Oh, they're all so great. They're all 70 plus, and I learned so much from them. They're just these wonderful people. The other day, I have two kids. They're young, they're loud. They have like bikes and scooters and all the things that Colorado kids have. And the other day, my neighbor like was walking over and my kids were being super loud. And I was like, oh my God, they're probably bothering her. She's going to come yell at me. She actually asked me to open our windows more because she really liked to hear their squeals and like hear them play. And I just thought that was so beautiful and like such a testament to this person who just loved to see children in her neighborhood. And like, what a great interaction. And as a parent, like for someone else to love my children, it just brought me a lot of joy and love for where I live.
That's really beautiful. It's like one of those things. Whenever we go and do these through hikes, you know, we see such kindness and generosity. That's just, it doesn't expect anything, and it really rejuvenates and renews our hope in humanity. You know, if we ever really get bogged down in the bad minutia of things.
It's so true. I experience that on boulder trails all the time too. I'm a trail runner and, you know, I've been out there, I've been running for like 30 years and somehow I still manage to like not bring enough nutrition or not bring enough water on like, I mean, how many times have we done this, right? And I remember I was out once and I'd run out of water and I had like a good distance to get back. And I was like, well, this is going to be really rough. And of course I ran into two people. We like start talking and they're like, are you okay? And I was like, well, I ran out of water. Well, like long story short, not only did they give me water, they were like, we're just going to run back with you, make sure it's okay. And, you know, now we're friends. So that's kind of how it goes here. People look out for each other.
That's beautiful. I love the state.
Yeah. And this is like very Coloradan. I lived in New York City. I lived in San Francisco. I lived in Boston. Each place has its own aspects of community. But in Colorado, I feel like we have a beacon for like, someone is on a trail in need. I must go help. And I just love that about this place. And I've experienced that too in other mountain communities as well.
Exactly. It's like a call to arms. The village rallies together.
Oh, we rally. Or it's like, you know, you have all these ultra marathons and like people who are out for like days out on these trails. And it's just so supportive and so loving. Like, I just feel like despite this being the capital of like the fastest runners ever, that could be like a negative feeling, but it's so positive. I feel so uplifted by how connected people are here to the trails and the experiences that we like to do there.
Yeah. Marie ran into Courtney DeWalter once in a gas station in Leadville, and she completely like spaced out and just said, excuse me. She didn't even say hi to her or nothing. She just said, excuse me, getting through the aisle. So Courtney, if you're listening, just know that my wife would really like to meet you again and have a do-over.
Yeah, they're all so nice. Like we work with all these trail runners, like Scott and Jenny Jurek are on our run team, and they're so kind and so thoughtful and such great runners, and they're always giving back to others. And I really admire that about the culture and the sport. And we try to do that at POW too. We try to be the brand that you work with that shows up when you get injured or when things aren't going well, just as we ask you to participate in our climate work.
Sure. So y'all work at the confluence of basically conservation and outdoor recreation. One thing that we like to push here, I guess with our podcast, but also just in our personal lives, is for people to just pick up like one piece of trash whenever they go out on a trail or outside. If they take what's theirs and they pick up one other piece, like at some point, those areas are going to become clean. It might take a while for some more than others, but that's kind of our message for the problem that we see that we can address. So for you working at POW or even in your personal life, what do you see as a big problem at the confluence of conservation and recreation that needs to be verbalized? And then what do you think we can do about it?
When you look at conservation and recreation, conservation is such a big space, and there are so many ways to be involved. And I think where I would share a call to action, it's to engage in climate change mitigation in addition to conservation. And that is harder and less direct. And so the actions that you're describing are really important in terms of, like, we call it like show up in the world in the way that you aspire to be, like be someone to emulate and like live a life in accordance with your values. Climate change is kind of like, going from like the entrance to the trail to like the crux move on the trail. And it involves things like educating yourself and learning about topics that for me used to be scary, like clean energy. I was like, I don't know anything about energy. I can't, be someone who advocates on behalf of that. We also hear a lot from people that they feel like they have to be perfect before they approach that crux, hard, steep section of the trail. So I hear a lot of people say, I can't work on climate because I take airplanes, or I don't have an EV, or I can't afford solar. And that is a limiting belief. You can absolutely be a climate champion and not be in a position yet to afford solar, which is frankly quite expensive. And so we have a concept at POW we call imperfect advocacy. It's showing up to the trailhead when something looks steep and scary, even when you don't feel like your conditions are perfect yet. It's about showing up and helping anyways, because systemic change comes from that shared push and pressure, especially on our political leaders, to create a better, cleaner future. So I would really encourage, go up to that steep section, know you can do it, and be okay with the fact that we are all a little imperfect, both in how we show up and how we climb it.
For sure. And that can look like not buying a brand new item, but buying something used on Facebook Marketplace, economizing your driving trips. That way you're making multiple stops instead of multiple trips. There's just so many ways that you can contribute to this, but not beat yourself up over the fact that you have to take a plane for a business trip to earn money to make a living to provide for your family.
Yeah. And no individual controls the fuel that goes into that airline. And that's what we have to change. We have to motivate airlines. We have to motivate innovation. We have to motivate political leaders to set standards on that. So, the levers for change are really big. So live a life in accordance with your values and know that we also live in a system that's imperfect. So we're imperfect too.
Sure. Now, it sounded like you kind of separated climate change from conservation. Do you think of them as two completely separate topics, or do you see one as like the umbrella problem to conservation?
I view them as brothers from a different mother. They're related, and they absolutely both go to the family reunion together, and they love each other and they look alike, but they are different. They have different personalities. So to engage in climate work is to take on the fact that it has been polarized. It's to take on the fact that fossil fuels influence narrative and elections. It's to take on new learning curves, like in different sources of energy like solar and wind and understanding how that works. It's thinking about, something like food waste or how we heat and cool things, or transportation, which is the largest emissions footprint of most of our states. So there's a part of climate work that does get a little wonky. What I have found joy in is it's almost like getting outside. It's like you're learning a new skill, and it's pretty technical, and you need science and technology and finance and all of these other levers that enable it. So I see a lot of outdoor enthusiasts really excited about conservation. That's awesome. My call to action is, if we don't solve climate change, what we conserve isn't really going to be usable. It's going to be dry, hot, probably burned, probably flooded, maybe under the ocean. And so we actually have to do both together. And I like to help people overcome some of their resistance or fear of climate and maybe some of the misconceptions that are associated with it out there.
Yeah. We have a good friend who's also a thru hiker, and I don't remember the specifics of how the conversation got started, but we were talking about, doing what you can at a personal level to try and make positive change, whether it's trash, using a bike versus a car, or just little things like this. And their response was that I could go as green as possible for the rest of my life, and it would make an ounce of difference in what we're seeing. What would you say to that?
Mathematically, that's correct. Climate change is solved primarily by stopping the use of fossil fuels. And so, any individual, yes, we can absolutely live in accordance to those values, but it won't make a difference because we're still living in a system that uses fossil fuels as our primary source of energy. And so that's what we need to change. So it's like, okay, well, how do you change the types of energy that are on your local grid as an individual? You have to join a movement. Protect Our Winters is one of them. We advocate for board elections where we, in rural areas, help elect through our 501c4 leaders that know clean energy and are going to work on getting more clean energy on those grids. We work on getting out the vote. So voting for political leaders who are going to prioritize climate change as an important problem to solve in our world. So, if you were to describe it as like the footprint of a company or corporation, it would be like a little teeny tiny speck of dust. And a fossil fuel company would be like a huge boulder on the trail in terms of like what you actually need to influence to solve this problem.
Yeah. It's funny you use that analogy, a speck of dust, because dust can ignite and it can cause big change, right?
It can. And if we all come together, great, that's part of what we're trying to build. I mean, the essence of a movement is that we're able to create enough pressure and enough advocacy to change those big systems. So that's actually where I see individual aggregation happening and helping the most, because ultimately as individuals, we can do everything right, but you're still going to run into the wall of what electricity is on your grid, what types of policies are being passed at state, local, and national levels. And ultimately, those are what are determining our emissions footprint.
This is not Colorado specific, but there's a lot of talk and conversations surrounding wind power, especially turbines, even offshore turbines. It seems like there's been a lot of pushback from the administration on, utilizing this alternative energy source, and all this stuff can be inflammatory. It's just something that people, I think, need to know more about.
There is a lot of opposition to, in particular, wind energy. What we see is often what some people call NIMBYism, not in my backyard. People want cleaner sources of energy, but maybe don't want to look at wind turbines or solar. And I'll give you an example in Colorado where about 10 years ago, we faced some of this opposition. So we were in a rural area of Colorado in the Roaring Fork Valley, and we were working with Aspen Skiing Company, with local athletes like Chris Davenport, trying to help pass a solar project and trying to transition their local grid to more clean energy. And we faced some of this opposition. We actually had like people within the same family show up to some of the hearings and disagree about whether they wanted a local solar farm or not. And it ended up passing in part because of excellent local advocacy from these community members. And that local grid went from about 40% scientific analysis, but Len has done that and has really thoughtful conclusions.
Do you think the benefits of its use versus the potential contribution towards global warming, you think it outweighs that detriment?
I am more of an AI optimist. I'm also a realist. Like,
it's not going away.
It's not going away.
No.
So, the other way I think about AI is that it's a technology. And what is the curve of technologies over time? Cost goes down and efficiency goes up. That is also true for solar panels. Their cost has gone down, their efficiency has gone up. They're both technologies. Compare that to something like a fossil fuel. A fossil fuel is a commodity. Look at how sensitive we are to geopolitical pressure, things that are way outside of our control, and a supply chain that is influenced by what happens way outside of our country. I would advocate for technologies as something to invest in over time, and that's part of the clean energy argument. Technology companies are going to be incentivized to use whatever energy they have, so we have to make sure it's good sources. But if you look at the economic profile of clean energy, that is a better selection right now than most fossil fuels.
Gotcha. Well, you don't hear dialogue like this unless you really dig into the science of it.
Well, I hope people get excited about energy. I worry people are like, what is she talking about? Let's talk about hiking. So we try to keep it fun, but think about what powers your lights, like the things we take for granted. Energy is so important in our lives, whether that's as athletes out on the trail bonking or, as people who can make decisions and support people who are going to choose cleaner sources of energy.
I want to end on, what is the most interesting or scary or crazy story that you have from your Colorado adventures?
Oh man, the most interesting, crazy, or scary story. Well, gosh, Colorado, California, all over the place. I don't know. I think it's so lately I've gotten really into backcountry Nordic skiing. It's not the most popular sport. I'll give you that. And so I've had some really good adventures in the backcountry, and I've learned if there's not an existing skin track going somewhere, maybe think about the wisdom of crowds. So that can lead to a cliff or some place that's private land that someone comes out and yells at you with a gun, over. So I have learned to read maps and be really thoughtful about route planning. I've gotten into some funny adventures by getting a little bit excited about powder and the undiscovered path, but I've also learned about the wisdom of crowds. So depends on how soon you go out after a storm, but if it's several days later, there's some real wisdom in crowds.
Definitely know before you go.
Yeah.
If you don't know, folks, that has to do with avalanche awareness.
Yeah, that's really scary, and that's something we take really seriously here. And that is something that's directly influenced by climate change. So avalanche conditions are getting worse because of unstable snowpacks.
Definitely. And that's caused by, you get a snowfall and then you go several days without more snowfall and it has time to melt and then refreeze. And then you have a new snowfall and it's basically powder on a slick surface at that point.
Yeah, it's all about layers and the stability of the layers.
And the layers you take with you, because there's no bad weather, there's only bad equipment.
That's right. And I have learned to have a lot of layers, even if I'm in the resort.
Oh, always, always. Last little thing for the listeners. What are some of your favorite phone apps that you use? And this could be like your favorite map application. I've recently come upon one that was called like 5 Calls, and that's one that you can use to call your local representatives. So just anything that you would be interested in sharing with people that they could just get on their phone to use.
Well, I use Slopes when I'm skiing. I love that app, and it has like friend-to-friend features. I also use All Trails for discovery. There's always places to discover in like really anywhere you are. And again, back to that wisdom of crowds, you'll get some good beta that way. Gosh, what else? I use advocacy groups to text representatives all the time. That really matters. Don't ever underestimate the importance of advocacy, contacting a representative. So groups like POW, some of our partners like Greenlight America or the Conservation Alliance or the Alaskan Wilderness League, they all have ways that you can plug in and do that. And yeah, otherwise I would suggest maybe get off the apps and put it on airplane mode and get outside.
That is good advice. I've thought about going back to paper maps, and I don't know if I would die or if I would maybe somehow survive without my phone apps.
Well, so I was just in the Alps and I found this so interesting. All the Europeans were using paper maps and all the Americans were on apps. And I was like, wow, I feel like this is just so indicative of our different cultures and different skill sets.
Yeah. There's something about seeing your little like toggle icon and the directional arrow on a map that's really handy though.
Yeah, and we were in some whiteouts, and I will be honest, I was happy we had the apps for that exact location. But I felt less cool and skilled than our European counterparts.
Oh my gosh, I know. They're awesome, aren't they? Well, thank you so much, Erin, for taking the time to speak with us, to go through, alternative energy sources, some calls to action on what people can do at a personal level, and really just bringing some good positive energy to all this because it can get really heavy.
Yeah, and I just want to encourage everyone with a final note of optimism. The best thing about climate change is that most people want to see action, and it is greatly solvable. So when you think about the one thing, if there's one that you can do to contribute to that this year, it is actually to vote. So voting is one of the top systemic actions that you can take as an individual. And just like when you get outside, encourage 3 friends to go with you.
Stoke the vote.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Well, thanks again so much for being on the show. And thanks, Pal, for having such awesome people to speak to. It's really been helpful and informative and enlightening to see different perspectives on things that, I've gotten bogged down with myself lately. So that's really helpful. Also, huge thanks to the Fire Once Lost for our intro and our outro music. And whether you're out on a Nordic trail with Erin in the backcountry, or you're on some little trail in your backyard, just taking your dog on a walk, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what trail you're on because we're just all outside walking. Hey everyone, Yeti Legs here. We just wanted to let you know that here at Yeti Walks into Base Camp, we do not use AI for any of our editing, recording, social media, or image generation. Everything is done by hand by our team, and that's how we want it to stay. So we hope you enjoyed this episode that was hand edited by our team with talent and integrity.